Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Bible Ponder for this week. We're going up one day late because of our life groups that met yesterday together on Zoom. And so we thought we'd just move this one day back. We'll have tonight's Bible Ponder, and then we won't have another one until the new year. So until then, a Merry Christmas to everybody. But we'll get through chapter 21 of Luke here tonight, and then we can pick it up in the new year and pretty quickly come to the end of the gospel. Last week we sort of dipped our toe into the beginning of chapter 21. Again, the chapters and verses were added quite a bit later to the text, and so sometimes they were not always following the kind of logical progression of where we would see the story going with more manuscripts and better translations. But the beginning of chapter 21 kind of links to the end of chapter 22, as if he's standing there in the temple courts and then he's speaking about the teachers of the law and the scribes and the Pharisees, and he looks up and sees a widow and he comments on it. And then there's a bit of a break. And it says, when some were speaking about the temple, how it was adorned with beautiful stones and gifts dedicated to God, he said, as for these things that you see, the days will come when not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down. They asked him, Teacher, when will this be? And what will be the sign that this is about to take place? And he said, Beware that you are not led astray, for many will come in my name and say, I am he, and the time is near. Do not go after them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified, for these things must take place first, but the end will not follow immediately. And then he said to them, Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes and in various places famines and plagues, and there will be dreadful portents and great signs from heaven. But before all this occurs, they will arrest you and persecute you. They will hand you over to synagogues and prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors because of my name. This will give you an opportunity to testify. So make up your minds not to prepare your defense in advance, for I will give you words and a wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be betrayed even by parents and brothers, by relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death. You will be hated, all because of my name, but not a hair of your head will perish. By your endurance, you will gain your souls. He keeps going, but I'll pause there for a moment. So in this whole chapter, he is predicting the destruction of Jerusalem, and he's predicting what will happen to the disciples who come after all this happens. And he goes into some pretty gory detail, some allegorical detail. Not everything that he says literally takes place, but he is very right that eventually Jerusalem and the temple will be destroyed. And it comes just under 40 years after he is executed. But what you also get here in Luke that's a bit peculiar to Luke is a sort of look forward to what will happen to the disciples and some things about going before kings and governors that kind of point, if you remember that this is a two-part work with Luke and Acts written by the same author to ostensibly the same audience. You get a bit of a look forward to Peter and then especially to Paul. Paul, of course, does go before kings and governors and is able to basically preach the gospel, or his gospel as he receives it, to kings and governors and all sorts of people, and he ends up in prisons and synagogues, and everything that Luke is basically describing here in Jesus's words happens to Paul. And so this is a bit of a look forward to the destruction of Jerusalem, but it's also a bit of a look forward to part 2 of Luke's books here, and a look forward to what will happen to the apostles. And so Jesus is kind of predicting both of these things. And this ultimately is one of the main things that the teachers of the law and those who accuse him before Pilate use as the main charge to get him executed is they say he claimed to destroy the temple, or that he will destroy the temple, even though we're given the hint that the temple he's talking about being destroyed is himself. He is looking forward to the destruction of the temple and the destruction of Jerusalem. But they're basically trying to say that he's going to lead a revolt, so you should execute him. So let's go on. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation has come near. Then those in Judea must flee to the mountains, and those inside the city must leave it, and those out in the country must not enter it. For these are days of vengeance, as a fulfillment of all that is written. Woe to those who are pregnant, and to those who are nursing infants in those days. For there will be great distress on earth and wrath against this people. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be taken away as captives among all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on the earth distress among nations, confused by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now when these things begin to take place, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. So Jesus here is sort of weaving in together a couple of things. So for one, he is sort of directly predicting the destruction of Jerusalem and directly predicting what will happen. Armies surround the city. Rome, and especially the General Titus, eventually do surround the city. They sack the city and destroy the city. And you can see in the Arch of Titus in Rome, there in the center, it's just near the Colosseum. The Arch of Titus is there, and it is a triumphal arch showing his triumphs, his wins. And there, carved into the side, you can see people bringing back treasures from Jerusalem, and you can very clearly see a menorah, amongst other very Jewish treasures, because it is from the sacking of Jerusalem that this is taken. And so that arch there is literally depicting what Jesus is predicting would happen here. But he's also weaving in apocalyptic language. So he's weaving in colorful and really quite interesting language to describe events that will happen in so many different ways. And he's echoing apocalyptic literature, especially Daniel 7, which is where the Son of Man coming on a cloud comes from. And that's speaking about a coming destruction of Antiochus Epiphanes, but then Antiochus Epiphanes' defeat, which then happens at the hands of Judas Maccabeus and the Maccabean revolt. But that passage in Daniel 7 is talking about the redemption of Israel against an invading foreign power. And so here we have Jesus repurposing that same idea, that same apocalyptic imagery, but applying it to himself and applying it to the destruction of Jerusalem, but also to just the freeing of the people through Jesus. So he's sort of weaving in a kind of direct language also with apocalyptic language. Then he told them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. As soon as they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is already near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that the kingdom of God is near. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. And again, this generation, as I said, 70 AD is when the full destruction of the temple happens, but the war starts 66, 67, and so it's only 40 years away. So there would have been people there who would have lived to see those events. Be on your guard so that your hearts are not weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of this life, and that day does not catch you unexpectedly. And that's also weaving in with the fig tree there, this idea of being ready, being prepared, seeing the signs. The day does not catch you unexpectedly like a trap, for it will come upon all those who live on the face of the whole earth. Be alert at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that will take place, and to stand before the Son of Man. Again, weaving in direct prediction and apocalyptic language. And then now we're sort of getting the shift from these chapters that are detailing Jesus in the temple courts, in the temple in Jerusalem, teaching, arguing, all of that. And we're going to now shift to kind of the final events. And we get these verses that begin that shift. Every day he was teaching in the temple, and at night he would go out and spend the night on the Mount of Olives, as it was called. And all the people would get up early in the morning to listen to him in the temple. And then we're going to approach the Passover, which, as you will remember so well, from hearing the story many times, the beginning of the Passover is the beginning of Jesus' own passion and his own eventual execution at the hands of the state and the religious rulers. So thanks for joining us this year through Luke, and I hope that you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we will pick it up with the Passion of Jesus next year, which is a wild thing to say. But thank you for joining us. Have a good Christmas.